Alright, let me check right here real quick. Yeah, that seems to be working. Got one more thing to start up that I didn't during the intro there, folks. And once that's ready, we'll be right at it. I hope you're doing well this new comic book day, this Wednesday. I'm doing pretty well. And we'll get to my mug here in a second. Let's go over here. Oh, all right, I did already turn that off. I was a little worried I had spoilers up on the screen, but I don't. Howdy, I'm Cody with IronVerse Comics. We're doing another What You Reading. I'm having some coffee. It's good stuff. All right, let's see here. Good stuff. It's cheap stuff that's doing its job. It's good stuff. All right, so that's down. I hope you folks are well. And I guess we'll hop right into it. We might be shorter this time. We might be longer. I don't know. I don't know. Most of these I don't know how long they're going to go. This is the first time I'm kind of dealing with digital, so this is how I'm going to handle it for now, but there are better ways to handle it. Um, our first read here, as far as I'm aware, isn't available in the West in any legitimate form, so that's fun. Um, Let me double check that. I can actually double check that right now. I have a feeling there might be one legitimate form. Let's see. But no legitimate physical form. That is guaranteed. Unless you can speak Japanese and read Japanese. Uh, look over here. Available instantly. I think it is just the same, though, however. Okay, it is available on Amazon at the very least. So definitely worth there. In fact, we can even just use that as we're looking through it, easier than showing you off of this little thing, which was my original intent. So I guess we'll just hop into that. We're going to jump right into a manga. We're jumping into a very, I hope, legendary manga. It's a sports manga. A little thing called bom 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 bom. There we go. Hajime no Ippo, which I have no clue exactly what it means. I think Ippo does mean fighting, like fighting spirit. I think is kind of what it means, spirit of fighting, something like that. We follow a young man constantly striving to improve in the world of boxing. A young, shy, um, kind of a dweeb kid, finding strength in what boxing means to him and not just the competition or the violence, not even the violence. In fact, the violence is the most played down part of all of it, honestly. More in the just getting stronger, getting better, the competition, the rivalry, the breakdown of skills and the understanding the rhythms. I mean, it's beautifully done. It's a bit of a gag manga here and there too. It doesn't take itself too seriously, except for the parts it really wants to, which is again the technique, the idea, the spirit, the artistry of boxing. It's what it takes exceedingly seriously. But the characters and the events and stuff, it's not held as seriously as the technique and the love of the sport. And beautiful spirit of rising to the occasion throughout the whole thing, just working harder to get better. Um, Beautifully done. We'll go through this to show you pages easier. I do recommend picking it up off of here, though I don't know if they have all the chapters translated, and I don't even think the fan groups have everything. There's like 1,400 chapters of this. It beat One Piece to the 1,000 chapter punch a long while ago. And there's a reason. It's fucking good. I have not gotten too far. In fact, I'm gonna have to check how far I got right now. I don't. I think I finished this first volume, but okay, I'm on round 14, which is chapter 14. That's as far as I've gotten. I've gotten much further in the anime, which is also very much worth a watch. Oh, a look at. But Oh man, so fun. So this art style too. So the anime doesn't capture the art style perfectly. It takes it a little bit more seriously. There's bits of this that are just ridiculous, and I don't know if we'll get to it. Like some faces are, that's understandable. That's not that ridiculous, but oh, and he gets to these movements too. He uses that kind of stance as a joke, moving back and forth. He, in fact, even uses that later in this first bit during his first match, which is hilarious. I don't know. It feels like the author really wanted this everyman feel, of course, but to even go further, this is all the terms I want to use are negative, and it's not presented as a negative thing. It's presented as just a human thing. This is who this kid is. Um, Again, dorky, I guess, will work in English vernacular, but really wanted this to show you what this person from a very humble background, single mother, uh, who actually I guess leads fishing expeditions. So he's been carrying worms and tackles and sea legs, been part of his life his whole time, and he got strong. He just didn't realize he was strong. That's one of the bits too, is that you're carving away at this marble that's good there, but you're making it better. Um, I wonder if it gets to that. So it starts off with characterizing him as being bullied. Um, Obviously here, I mean, they kick his ass, poor kid. Um, and he's doing what he can. He's being polite. He almost stood up to them there, but too scared because he doesn't know how to fight. And then Takamura shows up. Um, Wonderful mentor character. It's one of the better mentor characters I've probably ever read in fiction. Um, just goofy enough. So, one thing I really respect about this series, and I saw it in the anime and I've been reading it in the manga, is how they handle mentors. It's very rare you'll get a really good mentor character that's not just like a mouthpiece or a tool that's going to be killed off later, or something really goofy. Um, Takamura is shown as this guy who saw this kid with potential. In fact, it's one of those things where he's like, he gives him a challenge he doesn't think he can do, and of course the kid rises up, builds it upon himself, and carries it. And once that's recognized, he brings the kid into the fold to meet his master, so that his master can kind of judge and see what can happen, and can work harder. Um, that whole cycle is not explored for shit in the West anymore. Really bothers me, and in fact, I don't even know how much it's a little bit. My Hero Academia does it a little bit in the East. One Punch Man, it's kind of part of the bit, even though it's kind of the joke too, because he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's mentoring this guy who's worked so hard and changed out his body and shit to become this superhero, and all One Punch Man did is work really, really, really hard. um, it's um it's an interesting trope. Again, though, we don't get in the West. Like Professor X is supposed to be kind of one of those mentors, right? And I think he's been watered down a little bit from kind of that perspective. I guess Magneto would also be a mentor from that perspective. Um, there's that dynamic is not explored very well, and in this it really is. And trip and a half, it really is. And it echoes for me and means a lot to me for a lot of reasons, right? But one of them is the mangaka who created Berserk, Kentaro Miura. He was an assistant on this for a chunk of time. Now I don't know where he began in terms of like chapter wise, but you can see these echoes of mentorship in the work. Hajime no Ippo, Berserk, and so on. Uh, at the same time as it's dealing with mentorship in the book, and it celebrates it. This is the best way to put it. It's a wonderful celebration of that, and to filter it through boxing, which is a hell of an art. It's very interesting art. It's one where you have to understand pain, both in dealing it out and receiving it, and to treat it with respect and with treat it like an art, professionally. It's a hell of a thing to see. And this manga, it's perfectly paced. The art style can get kind of goofy, like I was showing. Takamura, of course, shows that you can get stronger than these guys. These guys ain't shit. They ain't shit at all. You're slow, you're clumsy, and it inspires little Ippo to try. And that's the thing, right? At the end of the day, one of the most effective types of heroes we can have are those that inspire. They don't even have to do that amazing of things, but they inspire someone to do better. To me, that's one of the core definitions of what a hero is. And Hajime no Ippo just explores that again and again with respect towards this beautiful and dangerous art form, with a sense of levity when it needs to. Um, just wonderful. And again, I'm only 14 rounds, as they want to call it, in on the digital here, but it's gone over 1,400 chapters, and there's a reason for it. And I look forward to reading as much as I can because I really, really enjoy it. And I can't recommend it enough for just if you need a pick me up. A wonderfully inspiring thing because he'll continuously get knocked down and get back up and get better so that he won't be knocked down the same way again. And that's fucking life as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I could talk per chapter, right? Because that's 14 chapters, about 14 issues of a comic. So there's a good amount that happens. This first one is a wonderful set of character introductions, and gets him set on his journey. It's a perfect chapter one. Um, and again, you can just read the first chunk of the chapter on Kindle right here on Amazon, and you can pick it up for $3. Definitely worth getting the first one and feeling it out if you can read manga and enjoy manga. This is a wonderful inspiration, just killer. Welcome, Dave. Thank you so much. And yes, QI the Tiger, no shit. If you're a Rocky fan, you'll love this. It's like everything you should be loving about Rocky, but distilled into something almost more wholesome, honestly. Uh, it's so good. So good. Um, Definitely worth. I mean, the art, even the art is really could be simple, but it's got this. Its main goal is to communicate the ideas. It does what art's supposed to do. So it looks good, right? It's clean lines. It's not a very simple manga in terms of the line work. It's not like Monkey Punch work, right? Which is simple to kind of make it goofy and light and jumpy. Now this has weight to it. It has movement. It wants to make sure you understand the power of strikes and the power of strength, but the gravity of emotions, right? But at the same time, it's light and playful. It's playful and respectful with a very something that can be taken far too seriously, right? Violence. Um, Very cool. I could go on and what matters to me about Hajime no Ippo, but only it can communicate it as effectively as it deserves to, right? So check it out. $3 just get you started digitally. You can't get it in English physically. It really pisses me off. I'm hoping maybe the success of things like the reprints of Fist of the North Star, for instance, which was another manga that has a cult status in the West, but did not have easy methods to get a hold of it. So I'm hoping maybe if this gets that treatment, man, I'm all over it. I really wish I could have this physically without having to learn Japanese. Bothers me. But the read, it's one of those few reads that transcends digitally, right? It doesn't, for me, I would love it in physicality, but it's so good. I'll deal with it here or on a computer screen. Here or on a computer screen. Just as long as I get to enjoy the story. That's rare. That's rare. So that's Hajime no Ippo. We'll go back and talk more about it probably later on in the reading. Just there's so much there from how he communicates strength again to communicates playfulness and artistry. Incredible work, and a reason why there's a reason why it's lasted so long and has a cult status without even easy accessibility. All right, next up on there, boom, boom, boom. And see, I originally had this was going to be what was showing when I'm talking about it, so I could show you easy. But that actually allowed me to scroll through some pages, so that was nice. Next up, boom. Most of you should know this. It's a Western childhood comic phenomenon, but I hadn't gotten into it. Really, I would catch strips, right? I follow the Calvin and Hobbes Twitter on Calvin Hobbes Twitter handle, and just gives the single strips and endlessly entertaining catching that. So I decided, what's it like to look at as it's presented to you, right? Um, in a collected edition. Seen them everywhere. I mean, a lot of schools ended up with these. With good reason. There's this respect to childhood that Watterson gives in Calvin and the Hobbes, which is just so cool to see. So playful. Um, it's so playful's the best way to say it. It's an extremely playful work. There's a reason why it's legendary. It respects imagination and playfulness. It respects how frustrating that can be for adults. It respects how frustrating that could be in between other kids, right? His interactions with his bully or with the female lead that shows up once in a while. Um, and just short, usually 4 panel scripts, right? Or sometimes he'll do a longer single page length script, which I think can be like 8 to 10 panels. Um, there's something about the a cartoonist's way of approaching comics that I respect so damn much, because it's a refinement and cutting of fat in communication that is just so wonderful. Um, everybody should know Calvin Hobbes, and if you don't, please check out a strip or two. Not hard to find them out there and see if it's to your mood. Not everyone's an absolute banger, right? You do so many goddamn comic strips, you gotta have some that don't give you an amazing chuckle. But if you read Garfield, or even Peanuts, you don't get the value you get like the emotional and imaginative value you get like you get in Calvin and Hobbes. Freaking incredible, and I was so glad I tore through 164 pages of this um, pretty quickly because of how enjoyable the strips were. I was looking forward to checking out the next couple every time I finished. Uh, he puts a loose amount of carry on, like story development, in between each. At least a good chunk of the time, or he'll have a single idea that'll go on for like 4 strips, 2 to 4 strips, where him taking a bath, and so it's a bunch of different kind of things to do with that vibe for a little while. Um, that's how it was tackled is so great, and how smart Calvin is for a kid, but how it's still coming directly from a child perspective. Um, Hobbs is a great kind of foil because he's super supportive, but sometimes he's making Calvin the joke, and sometimes Hobbs is being made the joke by Calvin. But mostly when that dynamic comes up, it's Hobbs making fun of Calvin in one way or another. Um, the dynamic with the parents and how they support his imaginary friend, but don't even indulge it sometimes, but don't indulge to the point of impracticality, right? They support his creative and imaginative impulses, but they don't. They make sure that it stays within reason, within realism, right? So that and all that's communicated 4 panels at a time. Pretty much. It's incredible. It's a beautiful exploration. I look forward to reading more. I'm gonna start probably collecting the physical books too, because it's something I think, and not just me, has thought that it transcends generations and it allows adults to connect with their kids and vice versa, and that's a beautiful doorway to open up with your art. Just wonderful. Howdy Taylor King. Anthropomorphizing, that's a great one, and that's the whole shtick. Anthropomorphizing his little stuffed tiger. Ah, so good, so good. His best friend and often his only friend, Susie, once in a while shows up, but Yeah. The best philosophical comic strip since Peanuts, no question, no question. Um, Sometimes he'll take a break, and that will be the whole bit. Is just kind of like, what about life, right? And it'll be this playful kind of like what you have to do as a kid because you don't understand enough. You just kind of accept it. You find your path through it and push forward. Um, Beautiful to see that represented how he does, and the art style's real fun. I love Spaceman Spiff. Uh, when he's in the classroom, he's imagining his teacher's an alien, and he's just having fun because holy hell, is that time in your life you're dealing with so much authority, right? Um, every angle is just this authoritarian bearing on top of you, and Calvin, he doesn't give two shits. He's living his best life, even if it's got to be up here. And ah, it's so good. It's so good. I know this is not something that, isn't well understood. People who know the strip love it. It's just kind of it's one of those things. And so I haven't dove into it until now, like to depth. I saw again 4 panel strips here and there posted on Twitter, and I had heard of it my whole life, and I had heard kids loving it and stuff, but I never dove into it until this last week, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I did. It's so fun. It's so fun. And I need that grounding, right? That perspective that allows you to pivot and push forward. And Calvin Hobbes can give that, and I think he can give it from so many different perspectives. Again, generational perspectives, and that is an incredible feat to accomplish. Just incredible. Um, Now we were talking about Hajime no Ippo before this, and it can do something similar. See, but it does it very differently, and that's what I love about comics is it can tackle similar things in so many different ways, um, so that different readers and different types of folks and different personalities can connect with it. And Calvin and Hobbes definitely distilled that. It was able to connect with a very wide audience while keeping to a core. Um, while Hajime no Ippo I mean, it's niche, um, and for a good reason. Again, that the difference is, the Scholastic and a lot of other folks jumped on Calvin and Hobbes because they saw what it was and its merit stood up. Um, Hajime no Ippo was probably during that time where the West and the East weren't communicating all that well, and that's one of the other things about Hajime no Ippo I didn't mention is that the manga compared to the manga has this massive respect and almost envy for the Western boxing scene, and it's really cool to kind of feel that out. The thing that gets him to want to be a boxer, in fact, is a Mike Tyson match in Hajime no Ippo. Um, and it's really cool to see that rendered in here. So that might also be what limits the reprints and the getting it out over here is because of Japan has and had have and did have looser IP regulations. Let's say they even support their underground indie comic fan fiction scene. Um, Tentatively, not directly. Certainly more than we do here. We have such a negative connotation for fan fiction over here, but over there, it's kind of seen as a way to cut your teeth, right? Um, and so the IP law perspective is a little different. Um, but yeah, and 2 very inspirational reads to start right off with, and I'm happy to present them, and I hope folks check them out. I really, Calvin and Hobbes, it should be easy to get a hold of. They've always kept it cheap, which is nice because it's a children's book, right? And I definitely want to start collecting it just so I have it if I'm ever blessed to take that step in my life where I'm taking care of another. Um, I think it's a beautiful way to share some things, and I think it's why it's been so good. Howdy, my sketchbook. Doing a What You Reading. Talked about Hajime no Ippo, and then we were talking about Calvin and Hobbes. This is Calvin et Hobbes, at least the image I'm showing there. Um, Not exactly what I got, but it was the best image I could find of the volume I had, so bear with me on that. But Yeah, and then the rest here that we're going to talk about. So we're actually focusing on mid-teen to younger reads this week, which is kind of surprising for me. Usually I have something with a bit more violence or a bit more of an edge to it, you know. Um, but this week, no, not so much. In fact, the next reads we're going to go through are the edgiest this week. Hajime no Ippo is not that edgy. I mean, it's got some cultural bits like nudity is played as a joke. And okay, I mean, there's a running joke in Hajime no Ippo on the main character's dick size. That just keeps going on and on, and I get it. It's fucking hilarious. Also taken as a cultural kind of boundary thing, it's fucking hilarious. But some people might not find it as hilarious. Um, Calvin and Hobbes, of course, completely generationally acceptable. There's no problems there. It's just it might support mischief with little kids, but literally the word is mischief. It's not trouble even. I mean, he floods the house once. I remember that. It's just him calling his dad. He's on this step ladder and you can't see the water or anything. By paddle, he's like talking to his dad, all kind of relaxed and such, and kind of trying to ask him when he's gonna get home because he fucking flooded the house in the last panel. It's you could tell it zooms out a little bit, and then he's standing on the step ladder, the whole house, 13 feet of water or whatever. It's so good. So good. His visual puns and communication are just extraordinary. Watterson's. Um, so good. So good. All right, so we're going to move on to the rest. In fact, all these have a comedy edge, too. So, doing it for my own mental state, I think, too. So, usually I do have physicals of these things to show you folks and to kind of share what I love with you folks. So, this time we're going to kind of do both since I have this window open that shows Calvin, show the images while I'm talking about them since I couldn't really because they were digital. Um, but here we can do both so you guys can get a look at the cover more consistently when it's not just me showing it. So I was having a hard time trying to find something I wanted to read for today's Whatcha Reading. Most of the stuff was digital again. It was 14. Most of what I read was Hajime no Ippo, and that's really hard to show digitally on here. I'd have to pull it up on the computer and then go through. So I didn't do that, as you folks can tell. I lucked out. Amazon had a few pages so I can show you an idea of the artistry. That made that easy. And Calvin and Hobbes, people know Calvin and Hobbes. This, I hope more people know, but I don't blame people for not just because of how it's been handled. But it's probably my favorite ongoing creator-owned comic for just being a general funny book, being what I feel comics can do at their best, which is kind of what we were talking about the last two reads, but a little different. And I try and do at least one issue of this every Whatcha Reading, because of how much I respect this book and how little it's spoken about. This is Sergio Aragones's Gru the Wanderer. In this case, we're going to be looking at 28, 29, 30, and 33. Sadly, that's my break is 30 through 33, or we'll be looking at 31. It's really neat. The next two I'm really interested to talk about. Most of Gru the Wanderer is self-contained. Usually it's just a silly story about this barbarian who is slow of mind, wanders, obviously, the wanderer, so he can go wherever, and that everybody pretty much knows how bad he is. He's bad luck incarnate for almost anybody who interacts with him, except for Gru. Gru is so tough and so strong that he can survive his own stupidity, but most other people can't. And that's kind of the ongoing thesis of it, right? It's what makes it. It's got a cartoon strip thesis to it, but is presented in full comic format, which is really cool. It allows the stories to be more in depth and to play more jokes than you would get in a comic strip. Um, great hybrid, and a great way to keep the levity and still develop like ongoing story and fantasy and build a world and do all that cool stuff you get to do in ongoing monthly bigger comics compared to um, strips, right? With Calvin and Hobbes, you're not really building a world as you're building this little kid's mind. Um, Hajime no Ippo, it's building a bit of a world, but it's such a grounded world, it doesn't need to focus on it, so it focuses on characterizations and actions and choices. Very, very cool. This focuses on stupidity and his comedy. 28 is him looking for some food. That's the whole bit. He's hungry, and there's two kingdoms. He does a lot of these dichotomy bits of royalty or armies and stuff so that Gru can get in the middle of it and just fuck it up for everybody. He really likes to do that. And that's kind of what happens here. He's just looking for food, and eventually he finds a way. He's sniffing through food. He can smell this really good food. He's led to kind of where it goes, and so he gets a job in a kitchen, thinking he's going to get food. Turns out that that kitchen just gets stuff ready for the king's kitchen, a higher a higher level. So he gets bored there and just leaves because he can't get to the king's kitchen's food. So he go find something else to eat. And then he ends up in another kingdom that's looking for a really high level chef to prepare a meal for this meeting of these two kingdoms so that they can make peace and move forward. So Gru goes looking for a chef. He eventually captures the chef from the king's kitchen that he was working under for the other kingdom. Brings him there. They cook the meal. Everybody shows up, and then turns out that, of course, that chef was the other party of the two kingdoms that wanted to meet the other party's chef. And so as soon as that king sees that his royal chef that he's been looking for, who was kidnapped, is actually feeding them, it goes straight to war, and that's the pun. These usually have a moral at the end of it. Let's not the best explanation of that issue, but you get the idea, I hope. And the moral was dun dun dun. Last page is when they fight. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, a route which takes you nowhere near his brain. Again, just commenting on Gru. Basically, Gru got his meal. He got to eat at that feast, right? So he was fine. But he doesn't get his reward for finding a chef for the feast. Another reason why I love Aragonas's work is he's able to do this. Oh, God. I will figure out how to present these pages better to you folks one of these days through this. It really bothers me. I can't. He does this hyper detail with his playful lines, and I respect that so much. There's always something else, if you go back and reread, to see in the backgrounds. Something funny, usually. Something goofball, some funny face or something that he, every placement is intentional, as is with most art, but it's rare you see that with this kind of cartoonist style. I think that's what made Sergio so prolific. Was the fact that he was able to combine this extreme artistry with this goofy soul, and man, it's so good to read. You find that usually the last page, and then the opening of each issue. So not usually the first page per se, but the title page of each issue, you'll find him doing that extreme detail in usually a big double page spread. Whoop. And then you'll find it at the last page where he's giving you the moral. There's a rhythm to it too. He started developing this ongoing joke as well, in I think since issue 20, I want to say, where somebody will call Gru slow of mind, and then pages later it'll click for Gru, and he'll say, "Wait, what did you mean slow of mind?" I mean, I love that kind of humor. And it just exemplifies it. This one was good. Classic again. He just wanted something to eat. And so you can see on the cover, he's just chopping down whatever is there, and it's not that great, but it's something to eat. And that's in here too. The plot's simple, but the gags are what carries it. It's got that almost a sitcom feel to it because of that. But it's still an action book. Gru still slays everything. It just doesn't show the gore or anything because it's a joke. Just everybody gets beaten. You usually see people fall down and they're like, "Oh God, Gru's here." It's such a great characterization, and the writing is unique because it is another person's perspective on English, and not just it's a foreigner's perspective on English. So you get a lot of words and patter and speech that isn't the norm, and yet is 100% communicates what it needs to, and it gives it this personality and playfulness, and this helps it not take itself too seriously, which would nearly be impossible from the ground up because of the art. But still, it just adds to the flavor and the tone of these works, and I really enjoy that. I enjoyed Gypsy by Heavy Metal, Gypsy Wandering Star, for a very similar reason, um, because it was this translation, this other perspective of English. Um, that was just awesome. It adds so much more layers because you get word choices and sentences that you don't find that aren't that common. Um, that give it flavor and personality. I really love that, and that's going to be any Gru issue. There's a fella who sometimes is called a trainer, sometimes he's called the Bard in one issue because he did all the rhyming. He helps structure it for Argonis so that when he wants to do his rhyming, it makes sense. And the Bard itself, that's the whole bit, right? So if you have a story that's the Wandering Bard is a large part of it, he kind of needs that help to make sure everything can rhyme and still communicated properly. So it's neat to see that credit. Stan Sakai, the creator of Usagi Yojimbo, does all the lettering in Gru. Um, so it's got that a little bit of pedigree to it too. As an indie creator-owned book, just incredible. Aragonis was one of the first to really fight and stick to his guns on a creator-owned IP. And I'm so glad he did. Gru the Wanderer would not be what it is if he hadn't. In fact, I don't know if it would have even gotten anywhere if he had allowed them to dilute what he wanted it to be. So that's 28, where he's looking for some food, finds it, and causes trouble along the way. That's Gru. 29, and I had no idea I was going to be getting into this, and I was looking forward to this, since I had kind of heard of the character of Roberto, his dog, right? I didn't know when he was going to show up or how, but issue 29 is when he shows up. Gru is working on a demolition crew. It's actually working out because he's good at destroying things, right? Too bad he destroys the wrong pillar because he gets too into it, and it knocks down the queen's castle walls. And her dog, Rafferdo, escapes. And Rafferdo's done living the posh, pampered life in the castle. He wants to go on an adventure. He wants to find somebody to take care of him and to actually go live life instead of just being taken care of and forced to be basically an object of display and such. Eventually he finds Gru, and through a bunch of misunderstandings. So how they meet is Gru, after that work and getting kicked out of town, as he does for smashing that one pillar, which you can even see on the cover here, which I'll switch on over here to it. uh, he's right out of town, of course, and so he's trying to get some more food, so he sets a trap, and he catches Rafferdo. Um, Rafferdo doesn't think that Gru was the one who set the trap. He just knows that Gru freed him, and Gru's like, "Well, I guess I could eat this dog. Maybe boil him or broil him. Do something to eat him here in a little bit." And Rafferdo just thinks he's getting saved, and they're after Rafferdo. To return it to the queen because the queen wants it back, wants him back, of course. But also the king wants the collar he has, and they are going to make sure that you know how much. That's the only thing the king talks about in every scene he's in is like, make sure you get the collar and the collar. Don't forget the collar. It's part of the joke. Eventually, you find out that the collar he's wearing is worth quite a lot. But before that, it plays on the dog being worth 1,000 kopins, which is a lot of money. And so you have these guys chasing the dog. They want the dog, and Gru wants to eat the dog. And he keeps saving Rafferdo by accident or because he wants to eat him later. And Rafferdo just keeps gaining affection, thinking that, Gru is his hero. He's this brave, amazing hero that he was so lucky to find, and keeps taking care of him. And the whole time Gru's just thinking about eating him, right? He eats one of the times he defeats the guys chasing Rafferdo, and they left some food and such, and so he opens the sack and he starts eating, and it's caviar or whatever, and he thinks it's gross. He thinks it's just old black fish eggs, so he throws it on the ground to feed Rafferdo. It's like, I will feed the dog so that he'll be fatter when I eat him. And the dog's just like, oh, caviar, he must really love me. Little things like that. The bits were great to kind of build the bond between them that's fake, but not really. This first issue, it doesn't change. The entire time, Gru's just wanting to Well, at first he's wanting to eat the dog, and then he hears the dog's worth something, so then he wants to sell the dog. He wants to get the reward for bringing the dog back. And there's a bunch of third parties that keep trying to get the dog from Gru because Gru's stupid and they can play him. And of course, Gru's also terrible luck, so you're interacting with him, you're probably gonna lose out, even if you think you can outsmart him. That's been this entire thing, is that he's dumb luck incarnate. Uh, and This is kind of a part one. It's one of the few that are kind of rely on a future issue kind of. 30 carries on what 29 starts. So we don't get the Referto plotline finished in this first issue, but we get all the jokes and all the setups for what's to come in it. Again, the ongoing bit that Gru doesn't really care for Referto quite much, but keeps making himself extremely endearing to Referto. And there's just a lot of those kind of jokes in it. Again, the art style is wonderful, and you get to see a bunch of ill intent people trying to take advantage of a really dumb person get their comeuppance. That's always nice too, and though Referto keeps getting handed back and forth throughout the issue, eventually you can kind of see Gru starts referring to him as his dog, and then by 30, that becomes very, very important. Boom, boom, boom. And 30, which is my favorite cover of Gru so far. I just love how it introduces Referto. And even in the corner box, which you folks can probably see better on the little image, but it's Gru just thinking of him as food, and Referto thinking of Gru as his master and somebody to love. Um, I really love this cover. It's got some of the better coloring that's happened in one of these covers. Really focused on shading, and it shows them as a team. And I really like this cover. I'm a dog fan. It's my job, for God's sake. So I'm always happy to see a good familial relationship develop between an animal and a person, especially when it's from such a different set of perspectives, right? Um, Always means a lot to me. And in this one, eventually they find out that that collar is worth 100,000 kopans. And so it's very similar to 29 in that there's a lot of back and forth between different factions trying to get a hold of Referto, while Gru does not know about the 100,000 kopans. I don't know if he'll ever learn about the 100,000 kopan collar. He just wants the 1,000 still. But they play it against each other enough, and then eventually Gru gets one of the guys had a plot to sell Referto to this one guy, to the queen, or no, a dressed up Referto, basically a fake Referto. Paint dots on another dog, and get the collar from Gru because he doesn't know the collar's worth 100,000 kopans either. Put it on another dog, paint the dog to look like Referto, sell it for 1,000, then go get Referto from Gru, and then sell it to another guy who wants it for 1,000. Eventually, Gru ends up with both bags of money and people to slay, and that's how how it ends. And I think by the end of it, he's referring to Referto as his dog. Get your hands off my dog, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. If you folks don't read Gru, um, please do. I know we're actually getting Gru versus Tarzan, or Gru and Tarzan here this year, so that's probably the most new Gru we're getting. But Aragones for his history in comics and for what he's done and how he's done it, um, really worth checking out. Particularly if you have some sense of humor. These comics have me chuckling throughout because of the vibe he puts, the tone he puts into every panel. Um, it's got me chuckling throughout, and then there'll be a couple actually belly laughs, right? And that's a hard thing to give a very overly serious person like myself. It's a wonderful gift, and worth checking out. Please do, please do. That's Gru 30. Now, I wish I could have followed to 31 and 32 and on, but I don't have those issues. I'm hoping to someday fill out a full run of the Epic Comics run of Gru the Wanderer, but until I do, I have a good chunk. Until I run out, I won't start looking for more. But particularly because they're self-contained, so I don't have to worry about skipping so much. So we go on to Gru 33. And howdy, Neostar. Welcome, welcome. Hey, El Crudo, welcome, welcome. Sorry, I get lost in my thought on these things, which is, I guess part of the viewing experience, right? Bum, bum, bum. Yes, absolutely. That's the thing too. Sergio Aragonis knew how the comic book industry is, and he's very direct about it. Like even the first issue of Gru going through Epic Comics, um, like he talks about how he introduces you to Gru as him in the cartoon world. It's a trip, and he says, this is why I'm doing this way, and why I had to wait so long, and why it was kind of posted a bunch of different places, is because they wouldn't let me do what I want to do. Um, so let me show you what I wanted to do, and then he pulls the curtain back, quite literally in the page, and then you start Gru's journey. Wonderful introduction to a character. I believe I did an IronVerse Quickies that talks about that. Um, so if you folks want to go back and actually check that out for Gru the Wanderer #1 through Epic, please do. I think most of my thoughts were pretty well presented in that. But 33, it's a pirate issue. Starts off with pirates raiding uh, a coastal village, and ends with Gru leading both the villagers and the pirates, and being exceedingly confused on who he should be slaying. That's basically the whole joke. One of the ongoing jokes is any ship that Gru gets on sinks almost immediately, and so he's got to get to these pirates, and they're on an island, but it doesn't sink, right? It's on an island, so the only way to get there is on boat, and every boat he gets on sinks. So that's probably not going to work. Rafferto is like, so he gets there somehow, right, on this little boat that this guy thought that it would crash, it would right away. He kisses his boat goodbye as soon as Gru says he's going to use it. Um, and Rafferto's got his paws down on this thing the whole time, very curious. It's gonna sink, isn't it? It's gonna sink. And they get almost all the way to the island. Rafferto sees the island. He's like, "Oh, I've waited too long. I better get right off." And the second Rafferto hops off the boat sinks. So they both go ashore. Um, the rules of piracy. So he goes up to the village and asks, "Hey, are there any pirates here?" They're like, "Ha ha ha, we're all pirates," and he just starts slaying everybody. Eventually, he kicks the pirate leader's ass and is made the new leader, because that's how it works in pirates in this world, and in quite a few. Um, and So he becomes pirate leader, and then goes to go raid the village that was supposed to be uh, he was supposed to go kill all the pirates for. And that's where there's confusion, and so it's played against each other. Eventually the king shows up and then destroys the pirates village, so the pirates actually have to go and take over the village, so they become the villagers. And so Gru's like, well, I'm supposed to protect the villagers from the pirates, but you're the pirates and the villagers. And so he literally just kind of wanders off and goes to think about it. There's this nice little 9-panel mini panel where he's trying to think. Doesn't really understand it. And then by the end, it's just everybody fighting everybody. He's like, oh, this I understand. So he just dives in to go kill everybody. And that's Gru the Wanderer. He wanders both mentally and physically all over the place. And oh, it's so fun. Again, you can't go wrong by picking up a single issue of Gru the Wanderer. Kind of wish these two, 30 and 31, had kind of a part 1, part 2 label to them, but they're self-contained enough. 30 explains 31 in the first page in about 6 panels between a discussion between two villagers, just kind of to catch you up, so it's not so bad, and you don't need 29 to get 30. But I think you get a lot more out of 29 if you have 30, for instance, if you can continue it, right? So that's one of the weaker bits of that. But like 95% of the time, they're self-contained goofball issues and stories. Again, if you just want a longer comic strip with that fun vibe, still a little bit of violence, still a little bit of action, a lot of detail, and just a crap ton of playfulness and unique writing you won't find anywhere else. That's Gru. That's Gru the Wanderer, man. Uh, Huge fan. And again, every week, as long as I'm doing these, I'm gonna until I run out of Gru. I'm gonna review one of these. Just talk about one of these at the very least. Um, More people should read Gru. And that really is my Whatcha Reading this week. The Hajime no Ippo, again, is 14 chapters I read. It takes him from the kid figuring out how he wants to get stronger to his first sparring match, to his rematch of his first sparring match. And that's a big theme in Hajime no Ippo, is that, even when he's beaten, he's going to get stronger to try again. And that repeats again and again. That cycle repeats a lot. It's a shonen manga thing, I think, too. You gain more power as you're defeated, but nonetheless, really, really good, wholesome, good for your heart reads this week for me. So again, some 4 issues of Gru the Wanderer. I recommend all of them. This week there was not a weak one. Some weeks, like, I'll read one Gru and it wasn't the strongest I've read, but it was still good. Like, I still had a couple chuckles. These were all hilarious, and the pacing and such was just great. Just great. I was so happy to read these. And Calvin and Hobbes. I mean, if you want pacing, you can read 4 panels in 20 seconds, and you've read something. But just credible respect and just so endearing. I think that's why Calvin and Hobbes has lasted so long. Is it's super endearing and respectful and playful. Very good mix of themes and of handling the themes. Just really great. Um, and that really does cover what I'm reading. As always, I'm interested in what you're reading, so put that in the comments and we'll talk about that for a little bit. I kind of knew this one would be shorter this week, partly because the digital thing doesn't allow me to show you as much, but also because they're quick reads. They were not deep, deep reads. They were inspirational and, in a lot of cases, very, very humble but funny reads. And so, a little less to say this week. A little less to say this week. Let me go through chat, though. Again, Dan Sacro mentions Aragonis' send-ups of Marvel and DC, and basically the entire industry. Always recommend his takes on that. The guy knew what field he was working in and decided, yeah, I'm still going to be myself. El Crudo never read Gru. I recommend reading Gru. But you got the Asterix Free Comic Book Day, which is pretty cool. Right on, right on. I haven't read Asterix myself. The Brilliant Star, welcome Neo Star, of course. Dogs do indeed rule. Dogs do indeed rule. Tarzan versus Mowgli. I mean, that's interesting. I definitely would be curious because it's very, it's the same 2 characters basically, except one maybe still a kid versus Tarzan. But I'm interested in Tarzan on Gru. Conan versus Gru was already done, or Conan and Gru was already done. I gotta read that because Gru is a parody of Conan. Oh snap! Jack Irons versus Gru. Oh my God. I would love that, to pair the sarcastic, satirical vibe with this grim, dark philosophy bit, and to make them play together. Oh, it'd be so fun. But that's a dream that I don't know if there's time for. Sadly, I hope. I could pray. That would be incredible. That would be an absolute dream come true. Um, Hot Steel, armed with justice. Silverware, you got your number 1. All right, I'm glad you're happy with it. I'm guessing if you ordered it straight from Wicked, you've got one of the limited printings that has the typo on page 1. The I before E, even though it should have been the E before I think, or no. Well, there's an IE mix-up in the word field on page 1. That's a great way to present to your reader right away. Yeah, we're serious. That has been fixed since in subsequent printings, but that is a thing. So enjoy that. I really love our issue 1 for what it's accomplished, and I'm glad you are happy with it as well. And thank you for stopping on by and saying hi on Whatcha Reading. And I'm hoping that's one of the look for the typo cache. I hope so. We watched other creators and their work actually get a speculator and collector market grounding, and we learned a lot from that. So hopefully, one of their main issues is, for one, they were doing print on demand, so you couldn't really ever say how many of a single issue there is. We can say that for every printing of our books, so that makes it easy for the speculators and such to kind of know what's out there. The scarcity, and then also to differentiate printings. and we've done that for sure. Those are the two main things that you kind of need to do to prepare yourself for that kind of market. So if that ever becomes a thing, I'm really hopeful that our supporters from the beginning can be rewarded if they need to be, beyond just the reading and the work itself. I would love to be able to do that for folks. Be nice for me as well in some cases, but honestly, I would love that investment to actually pay a return, particularly if people need it. Because I mean, I just want to tell a story. So if you've read and enjoyed the story, then the work's already done its job on my end. I don't need it to do more, but if it can do more for you, I want it to. Um, Imagine having a limited printing of Batman with a typo in it, right? Right. I'd be really stoked about that. But it's slightly more common in indie comics, to be fair. But as long as it is fixed in different printings, then that makes it limited, makes it scarce. Uh, and I mean, we went through a publisher, and I went through beta readers, and I went through my whole team reading this book, and that first page typo. And that's the thing. That's the thing with words. As long as they actually communicate what it's supposed to be, it doesn't really matter if they're misspelled for the story perspective. As long as it's not like a bunch of them and you actually have to think of what the word is and you have to, actually go out of the suspense of disbelief into engaging with a piece of written work. It's a little bit, clunky. So we love. I think the whole team just looked at that so many times that we just filled in that the letters are the right way. I think that's really just what happened. And so we worked really hard not to do that again, except in issue 2, first page. There's also a typo, but it's in a alien font, so nobody could really catch it in the first printing, but it's been fixed in subsequent printings again. It's missing a letter in the word for. It was faux. It was faux in the original printing. But it's for, FOR in the newer printings, as it should be. Um, and so I just thought it was fine. Our first 2 issues, first pages have typos. First printings or first 2 issues on the first page has typos. But issue 3, no typo on page 1. We were able to get past that. In fact, I don't think there's a typo in that whole issue because of how hard we worked with beta readers and the teams and stuff to make sure that that didn't happen. There might be, I could be wrong, but I think we did good. I think we were able to get all of that clean by like the second round of beta reads. Um, there was some clunky grammatical stuff too, which sometimes is my word choice, but sometimes it's just clunky, right? And it's not the best word choice. And so we were able to fix that a little bit in issue 3 as well, which was nice. Um, Neostar, you are currently reading Sentai Goranger, aka the original Power Rangers manga. Ooh, interesting. Translated, finally translated. Ooh, nice. Though it honestly feels like G.I. Joe meets Captain. Interesting. That's a curious combination, but I could kind of see that because GI Joe was all about putting a soldier in like a thematic role, and then letting that kind of play out on a battlefield, right, where nobody gets killed. Um, so I can see Power Rangers having like each character have a thematic role, each Ranger or whatever have a thematic role, each Sentai hero. Um, Interesting. I'm very, I grew up with Power Rangers, huge influence when I was younger. It's one of those that you can easily grow out of though, because it very quickly, the campy, instead of being cool, becomes over campy in some cases. I'm assuming the original Super Sentai stuff is a little less campy, but I don't know. So I'm definitely curious how the original manga was, and I don't know. Did it start as the Super Sentai start as a manga that then was pitched as a show, or was it a show that did so well that it got a manga to help increase toy sales and all that? I have no idea. If you know Neostar, let me know, or if anybody in chat knows, let me know, because I am curious which order that is. If because I don't think it was a manga that became a show. I think it was a show that got so popular they decided to do a manga to help sell the IP, but I don't know. But yeah, what I'm planning to read. Well, I should be getting more Battle Angel Alita Mars Chronicle here this week. In fact, today. So I'll probably be talking about that next week because I tear through that. I want to finish it and I want to know what he's doing with it. And the last volume, Volume 2, really lost me. So I'm hoping Volume 3 ties it together. that can happen with Kishiro, but it's only happened maybe 3 times in since the original run to this third run. Um, but I'm very curious. As I said last week, the second volume was him juggling so much and wanting you to be aware of everything he's juggling, maybe too quickly, which I've been guilty of that as well. Um, so I don't know. I'm hoping he's able to make justify that. It needs to be justified. That's where it's coming through because he had a whole like 3 volume run in Last Order, the second series. Um, of Battle Angel Alita that was like a complete sidetrack on this character. He spent 3 volumes exploring this character and his interactions and the origins of their world and like mainly the thematics made me seem like why are you doing this, and eventually he was like, oh, this is why, and fucking it made perfect sense and made sure that it was really like okay, it was worth it. So I'm kind of expecting that again with Mars Chronicle. But we'll see. So hopefully I'll have two volumes of that to talk about next week. I'm still trying to get through Scott McCloud's Making Comics. It's just very dry. And without me being an artist to integrate a lot of the lessons and ideas, it doesn't fuel me as much as his previous Understanding Comics did. Um, Man, I tore through Understanding Comics. I was so happy to read that because it was such a celebration of the medium. This is like, it's a textbook. Best way to put it. It's a textbook without being a textbook because it's totally a comic book. I love it. I love it for that, but it's still a textbook in terms of what it's trying to accomplish and how it goes about it. Um, Basically, anyway. I probably will read more Hajime no Ippo. I don't know if I'll have much more to say. Um, it's a sports manga, right? There's certain moments in it I could talk about maybe that are really cool. Like there's a moment in this previous run of issues I read where his primary rival, um, the guy who he has his first sparring match with and gets his ass kicked, but did way better than he should have for a first guy in his first fight, his first sparring match with no real official training or anything, just a little bit of tips that Takamura had given him. Later on, he's looking for the right gear for their big rematch, and his rival happens to be in the store, and this is what makes him a rival and not an enemy, is he sees the store owner trying to take advantage of Ippo by selling him the most expensive but most commonly bought type of boxing shoe. And like he looks at Ippo and he's like, oh god, I want him to be the best he can be. So he goes and he finds him the right kind of shoe because he's an in boxer, which means he has to go in and use all of his strength instead of technique and dodging on the outside. And he gets him the right kind of shoe because he helps him find a cheaper and correct type of shoe. Just so Ippo can fight him at his best. And that's the difference between a rival and an enemy. A rival wants you to do your best so that they can, beat you and be better themselves, whereas an enemy just wants you gone. And besides the mentor angle that Ippo celebrates the entire run, as far as I can tell, that rivalry angle as well is celebrated beautifully. And you'll find that with a lot of manga. They really celebrate what a rival is compared to what an enemy is. That happens again and again in a lot of different manga, and we don't get that so much in modern Western works, and I even struggle to think of a modern Western work uh, that does it. But like previously, we had the Magneto Professor X rivalry before it became, much darker and much heavier. Jump the shark, um, and didn't become a rivalry anymore. It was enemies. Um, but that's one I can kind of think of off the top of my head. Um, but it's rare to find those rivalries versus enemies in Western culture, and period in Western culture. I'm right there, but in Western comics in particular, it's kind of tough to find that. Um, Manga though, it's all over, and Hajime no Ippo tackles it beautifully. The original Super Sentai and Kamen Rider started out as manga. Okay, and then it was eventually adapted into the live action. But your artist knows history much better than you. Well, that's all I wanted. Is it did start off as manga? Okay, it's again where sequential art is the house of ideas. It's the birthplace. You know, that's cool. I didn't know that, and I wouldn't have expected that. Again, I would have expected the inverse. Um, Very cool. Good to know. Super Sentai isn't nearly as camp, which I expect. Yeah. Visually, it's still pretty goofy. Yeah. Um, but the stories and characters are played pretty straight. Okay. Also, way less plot armor for the heroes. I could see that. I could see that. Taking it again, if they're taking it more seriously, then that's part of taking it more seriously. Um, that's good to know. That's cool. Yeah, see, I wouldn't have expected the manga to come first in that case. I know that that's more common, but that's one I wouldn't have expected. Very cool. Very cool. But yeah, I mean, I probably am happy to keep this a little bit shorter this week. I don't have any updates really to give you folks. I guess I do a little bit. Um, but I'm not updating officially through Indiegogo until I know what's going on. Just because I didn't earlier, and I'm glad I didn't. But we should be finished with domestic orders of Jack Irons this week. We had found a error with the shipping document that Wicked was using that was missing a few orders. A few orders is perspective wise, that's a kind way to put it. So we sussed that out and we've got that moving. And international should have started this week as well. So I'm hoping we actually finish all of the shipping this week, but I'm not going to promise anything just because of how things have been moving. Uh, but we should be done with domestic this week. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be. We sussed out this. Everything's been paid for. So we'll see. We'll see. They've been really good. I mean, they've probably gotten out over 1,500 comics in the last month or so. And for a tiny publisher, this is their biggest endeavor they've ever undertaken. Jack itself, but then also this timeline that included Charger and Wrath. At the same time of fulfillment, alongside store orders, alongside a bunch of new printer proofs that came in for them. I mean, it's an endeavor that Wicked's undertaking these last couple months, and they've been doing pretty good. That's why I wasn't. I was a little gruff when I brought up that this could be a very, very big problem. But we're all learning, right? And we're all trying to figure out how to make this a viable business. And there are going to be stumbles. And to me, as long as the ship can be rocked but stay afloat, then you're in good shape. You just got to try and steer towards waters that aren't rocking you around and trying to break you as easily. And that's the main goal there. So they copped right up to it, and we got it fixed. So it is what it is. Um, Once I know that they've shipped out everything, then I'll update the Indiegogo backers so they can really expect their books. I did on Twitter a little bit when they announced they had finished because I thought they had, and they thought they had. But then we compared shipping documents after a couple of readers kind of like, well, I'm just curious because you said you're done. When can I expect this? And then I went and checked, and then I brought it up to them, and then we went back and forth with the shipping documents and found out what was up. So I'm very grateful for our readers and fans like yourselves keeping us on our toes, particularly me. I'm in a place where I end up being a little proud and worrisome, and that combination can be abrasive, and or can cause abrasiveness, I guess is the best way to say it. And yeah, I need that shit kicked out of me here and there, right? And gentle nudges is a great way to do it. Great way to do it to make sure that we keep this ship sailing, right? That holes don't spring, that'll sink, that I don't even notice, right? Don't want that. So thank you folks on that angle. And that kind of does it for the updates. We don't have much else. Cactus Coyote's Ashcan is being lettered right now by our wonderful letterer Vincent Rush, so hopefully we'll have an announcement on that end, probably through Patreon first. Um, Books are going out, almost done with it. Metal cards, I have the first round of stamps bought, and I have most of them packaged. I'm hopefully getting some printer ink either today or tomorrow. I needed a proper printer cable as well because handwriting all nearly 400 addresses is just, I'm asking for trouble. My handwriting is terrible. Um, so um, hopefully I'll get that done here and shipped out in pretty good chunk of batches here the coming month, and hopefully we'll just finish all of that as well. Um, the GoFundMe took care of what could have been a very painful blow. Very grateful for everybody who shared that. I've now cashed out both the PayPal donations and the GoFundMe donations. I've closed the GoFundMe's ability to take donations because we hit everything we needed. And I'm excited to pay that off and get that done with. It's just being a little bit of a pain. I got to go get checks and a few other things I just haven't done. Um, but I've been working, so that's kind of the trade-off. Today's a day off. Yesterday was a day off that I kind of used to clean and take care of things. And then today, this afternoon, and tomorrow, I'll be getting that kind of business stuff done. I'm still hoping for more IronVerse quickies here this week. I hoped last week, and I hoped the week before, and I think it's almost been maybe 2 months since I've done one, and I feel terrible about that. But sitting down, reading, and then putting the thoughts there, I just haven't been able to do that. And what you're reading here kind of helps keep content flowing while I'm having harder creative times on getting the smaller, more intensive videos. And intensive, I'm just tired, folks. And so like my perspective on things that are really easy isn't as true as it should be, and I'm working on that as well. But yeah, that covers what I've been reading. Neostar's been reading Super Sentai, which is nice. In the case of Goringer, it's much more grounded than Future. No aliens, wizards, or monsters, just special trained soldiers in cyber suits battling terrorism. Okay, okay, that's neat. Um, yeah, the Sentai genre I haven't been a fan of, or at least engaged with, since I was, 8 or 10, watching Power Rangers, right? So I'm so glad it's kept alive in a lot of different ways from what I've seen, which is cool. But yeah, I'm not involved in it in any way that I can comment on it, which sucks. But it is what it is. There's so much out there, right? So much out there to read, and we're blessed with the quality that's out there and the quantity. And I'm sure if you just look, you'll find things that you really enjoy, and maybe not everybody else is going to resonate with them as strongly, but that doesn't matter. Reading is one of the most selfish and gentlest acts you can do. The bad guys have the giant robots. Gorgers just get a flying battleship, so they get a shield helicarrier, huh? Neat. Neat, neat, neat. Am I missing anything else on update-wise? I don't think so. The GoFundMe was the big one. Thank you again. Um, the shipping issue, yeah, we spoke about that and how it should be resolved. I'll update fully once I know all issues are out through the Indiegogo officially. Um, and Cactus Coyote stuff hopefully coming here soon, one way or another. I'll keep informing people on that. And then otherwise, what I was reading, Hajime no Ippo, uh, Calvin and Hobbes, and Gru the Wanderer. Some fun, light-hearted reads. Hajime no Ippo is the most serious of them. Um, though Calvin and Hobbes can get very serious with what it decides to say. But not rarely, right? It's not the biggest thing, and usually by the end of it, it's just a kid accepting that the question exists, which is usually very playful instead of very serious and like we don't have an answer, so we should take it seriously or something. No, it's just like we don't have an answer. Okay, onward, and I appreciate that very much. And Gru is just always fun. Gru is a amazingly put together project, and I'm so excited. It's still got some legs, not an ongoing or anything, but still got some legs. And yeah, let me see what time it is, folks. My coffee's cold, so it means you've probably been going for a bit. Hour even. It's not a bad place to leave a what you're reading. But if you folks have been reading anything else, let me know in chat while I'm still live. And if you watch this later, let me know in the comments below. I would love more engagement on the comment level on this channel, but I'm happy with whatever. I'm actually really impressed with how much we've been able to grow, particularly hearing, how difficult hearing and then also experiencing how difficult that can be to get these channels kind of moving. With my production value in particular, production value, you can overproduce something, right? But a certain level of production value shows extreme respect to your audience. And though I absolutely respect and love you folks, I do not show you that very well in the production end. I have a couple bells and whistles to make this look a little bit better, but I mean, this is still an absolute apocalyptic put together shit show, and I love you folks for stopping by and enjoying it with me. And I hope we'll get some IronVerse quickies back on the channel here shortly. I have a bunch of books ready. In fact, there was a quickie segment which I'll do once in a while when I get a box of comics to look through for quickies. So if you folks want to go back and watch that, I believe it was an IronVerse Comics mail day. In particular, I was maybe in search of IronVerse Quickies 2 or whatever. If there's specific books you want me to look at that I showed during that, please let me know. That's a great way to inspire me to look at them. Otherwise, I have to sit down and want to read something new. And that happens, but as you can tell, it's happened a lot less for a while now. So any kind of nudge I would appreciate. Um, I, I mean, you guys inspire me every day to keep at this, and I'm very grateful for that. And can always use more. Can always use more. Jack Irons versus Lone Wolf, Clash of the Eternal Wanderers. Lone Wolf and Cub. I almost brought that out because I had read the one Lone Wolf and Cub novel I have from First Publishing. I guess it's volume 13. And I did read this, and it has very little actual lone wolf and cub. It involves a master and his samurai house a lot more than it does lone wolf and cub. But I hadn't read it recently, so it's harder for me to say. But I actually took a look at it, and I was like, maybe I should read that again before I go live. And I was like, it's probably too long. Just pick up another Gru. And so I picked up Gru 33 instead. But I like the concept of Lone Wolf and Cub like a lot. Like a lot. I'm thinking I'm going to want to start with the volume 1 through Dark Horse and see if that's my bag, right? Because I'm a huge fan of The Mandalorian, which took so much from Lone Wolf and Cub. And I know it's iconic for a reason. And maybe I can start on some of the films. Would be another way that sometimes gets me kickstarted in a franchise. But yeah, that'd be interesting. The thing with Jack is, so you could do that. You could absolutely do that. Jack would be. See, I don't know. I don't know the era that Lone Wolf and Cub takes place in. I think it's pre-Western influence Japan, right? So that would be. Jack would most likely have been in a Native American life, but I haven't been able to really communicate the whole past lives thing and how that actually works in Jack. And in fact, that's kind of one of the overall theses that we're going to be exploring throughout the entire series, with issue 5 being the next real touchstone on explaining it. Issue 1 was part of it, was the introduction to it. Issue 5 will be a touchstone, like really help with the whole placing that much of an esoteric idea in some grounding. But we're not there yet. Issue 4 is our first step on that adventure, and hopefully in August, if we can finish getting all these books out to you folks, which I don't see why not. It means this coming month I'm going to be trying to put together the issue 4 campaign. We'll see. Uh, we'll see. That's I'm kind of like I have been always extremely enthusiastic on putting out like this is what we're doing and when we're doing it and sometimes even how we're doing it and quite often I've been wrong. Just to put it blatantly there, and I hate disrespecting you folks like that. Pulling you one way and then it's this way. I don't like doing that. So I'm gonna try my best to make sure that everything's solid before I treat it as solid, right? So we'll see. My hope is we will have an issue 4 out by next year to you folks, but I don't know. Life's been odd, and one of the most important facets of my life is this stuff, but I want to make sure it's done right. And the Kickstarter was an attempt to see if we can get the mechanism running, and we couldn't. So I'm trying to approach this next thing as that as well, and that's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do. So we'll see how well I can pull it off. Anywho, that's about it. I think. Yeah, I think we'll keep it accessible. So I'm Cody with IronVerse Comics. This has been Whatcha Reading. As always, do all the good YouTube stuff and the Twitch stuff if you would. If you're watching on Twitch, make sure and go ahead and follow. We're trying to build that as well. Um, if you're watching on Periscope, thank you so much. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. That's our biggest and most active platform for engaging with you folks. If you're on YouTube, of course, like, sub, share, all that good stuff. Particularly if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't and you still want to share, thank you. Uh, and yeah, I'll catch you on that old rusty IronVerse Comics trail, and I hope to see you next week. And as always, in the comments, let me know what you've been reading. I want to know what's working, what connects with people, and particularly if you have the time and will, let me know why. What is it about this read that's really keeping you going? Super beneficial to creators like myself to know those things. So anyway, thank you so much, and I will catch you folks later on. Take care.